This is the fourth in a series of 4 videos supporting the book, The Betrayal of Officer Ryan Hoeft. In this final video, Dr. Janice Amatuzio will give a summary of the investigation and additional evidence that supports the fact that Ryan's death was an accident and not a suicide. It also outlines the legal process that the Hoeft family went through in the state of Minnesota in an attempt to get the Hennepin County medical examiner to change that death ruling.
Now, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up and show you why Officer Hoeft really had his weapon out of his holster. Why was he looking down? Why was it unbuckled? Why did he drift to the curb? And that came from looking at the past records. Briefly, he was dating Sarah. She was a sheriff's deputy in the jail. He died on a Tuesday night. They had just come back on Sunday from a 3-day trip to Las Vegas. He was so happy he'd asked his mother, called his mother and said, "I found the woman of my dreams. Would you help me pick out a diamond?" She said yes. The mother said yes, she'd help pick out the diamond. He wrote this card to Sarah. He called her Scrump. She found it the day after he died. Okay? It says, "Wanted to let you know what an incredible weekend I had with you in Las Vegas. One of the most enjoyable. Thanks for putting it together. I miss seeing you today. Lots of love. Love you, Ryan." Okay? Here's what happened when he reported for duty at 5 o'clock. He was scheduled to start. He got there early. He sent 3 emails. We know that. Those are the hours. 1563, 1655, 1658. And he sent one to Sarah. "Hey baby, how you feeling right now? I miss you and I'll see you at 6:30. That's in the morning. "It sucked not being able to see you today. I love you, Ryan." Sounds like a happy man. Then he writes to another friend, Ryan Hack. "What's up, Hack man? Nice hearing from you. I have a new phone number." Later, Hoeft, because he had just moved in with Sarah. They had moved in together on the 1st of November. And then he sent this email to Brian Waldvogel, "Nuts." He said, "I'll call you soon. Haven't been around at all on my days off. How's everything going?" So he started this shift feeling good, feeling happy. Here's his log of events. 1726, a narcotics call. 1802 hours, fire call. 1810 hours, property damage accident. 1831, ran a license plate. 1836, ran another license plate. At 7:30, a property damage accident. 1952, ran another plate. Had a theft call. Then, at 21:27 hours, which is 8 o'clock at night, 9:30, he gets a message from Officer Schultz, who was his FTO. "What are you doing for dinner?" So at 9:30, he takes a lunch break at the station. At 21:53 hours, he goes to a domestic. 3 squads were present, including Officer Schultz. In fact, Officer Schultz was the booking officer. Okay? So he responds. 1 was taken into custody. And he clears the scene at 22:01, so 1 minute after 10. Now here's something I didn't know. When I showed this to a group of officers, they said, "Well, Janice, don't you know that St. Louis Park has a sally port?" I, the forensic pathologist, the chief medical examiner, said, "And what is a sally port, and what is the significance of that?" All of you know the significance. Do the medical people know the significance? Well, I, for one, didn't. He said, "Yeah, that's a place where they put the prisoners until they're taken down to the Hennepin County Jail." So I educated myself on what a sally port is. It's a secure port where the prisoner is removed. They're always transported in the back seat, unless they're doing a ride-along with Sergeant Schmaltzbauer. And what the normal procedure is you get out of the vehicle. You all know this. You then lock up your weapon, put it in a lockbox or someplace. All of you know this better than I. And then you take the prisoner out. Then the prisoner is taken out. Correct, Don? Anything to add? Now, what could have happened and what sometimes happened? What is not written into the procedure manual? Well, sometimes the officer can forget. I would say virtually never, but occasionally they forget. They can drive away without their gun. And they sometimes, because of this, may not use the locked gun locker. They might put this weapon in their gun, on their dashboard, the floor, the passenger seat, someplace. Maybe in their duty bag on the passenger seat. What we do know that happened to Ryan is this. He assisted his FTO with bringing that prisoner into the sally port. And then, after that, he was seen leaving. Okay, he finished his lunch, he was done. He went out to the squad. He had to use a key to get in. That explains why his door was unlocked and all the others were locked. He gets into the squad, buckles his seatbelt, and maybe he forgets to reholster his weapon. Now, this is a lot of supposition on my part. So I went and took a look at his Verizon cell phone records and his log. At 22:08, 8 minutes after 10, he got an incoming phone call. It lasted 18 seconds. Then, at 1 minute later, 22:09, he made a 6-minute call to who? To Sarah, his girlfriend, who was working that night at the jail. Okay, so he talked to her from 22:09 to 22:15. That's when the cell phone call ended, according to the Verizon cell phone records, okay? Now, 6 minutes. How far can you go in 6 minutes at 30 miles an hour? Well, you can go about 3 to 4 miles. As a matter of fact, I thought, well, maybe let's go back to 10 o'clock. Let's go back to 10:02. And let's go all the way to 12:15. So let's say that that was 13 minutes since he was away from the PD. 3 to 4 miles, or about 9 to 13 minutes, would take us in a lot of directions, including the place he was found. I'm not saying it was where he was at that moment, but I am saying from the PD to where he was found was 3 to 4 miles, and it could have taken him that 9 to 13 minutes to drive. So let's say at 22:15 hours, he finishes his call to Sarah. All right? He remembers his weapon's not in the holster, unbuckles his seatbelt because he cannot reholster it while he's driving if that seatbelt is buckled up, and he reaches for his weapon, wherever it might be. But he does have an open duty bag on the passenger side. And with that, he drifts into the curb because he's reaching over to the right. And then he gets a sharp jolt. He corrects, and as he corrects, you know, he's going to go to the right, he's going to the left. The weapon fires. And then Sergeant Schmaltzbauer confirms that after he left the curb, none of this was purposeful driving. This was a drifting of the vehicle down. 22:45 hours now, 10:45. His FTO. What are you doing? You want to meet? No answer. 22:51, this man, Talbot, is going up to pick up his wife, who's finished at midnight, and he sees taillights in the park. 22:37, we've got another MDT message from Schultz. Are you out there? No reply. 23:52, message from Schultz to somebody else. Have you seen Hoeft? He's already starting to look. Can't find it. And then Talbot sees the taillights, flags down the officer, and Schultz goes down and finds Brian. This is something that Don and I showed the Hennepin County Medical Examiner. Sarah sent this to him, not even yet aware of his death. She sent him an email. It's me. Hey, baby, I love getting emails from you. I'm not tired yet. I'm sure it'll hit me soon. I'm so hungry. I'm waiting to get relieved here. I'll talk to you in less than 3 hours and make this short. I missed you. Made some plans. I have to tell you about them. Love you, Sarah. Does not sound like a Dear John letter. At any rate, that was what was important. So what was the manner of death? And here, very quickly, is the rest of the story. And this is in 3 slides, so bear with me. Because this is the reason we are here today, is it's taken 10 years to get to this point. Mary and Terry Hoeft, but primarily Mary, have put in an incredible amount of effort. Mary actually showed this to John Stanley, now deceased, the Dane County coroner. He looked at it, he had a lot of background in law enforcement, and he said to Mary, "This looks accidental to me. This does not look like a suicide to me." We made that reconstruction video about the same time, and finally had a chance to show it a year later to the Hennepin County Medical Examiner. And I want you to know the tone that Mary uses. Mary epitomizes what Winston Churchill says about courage, grace under pressure. Mary is persistent, but she is gracious. She wrote to Dr. Peterson, "It's my belief that the Hennepin County Medical Examiner did the best job they could have in investigating the death of my son. However, new information has come to light. Would you listen?" Dr. Peterson wrote back, said, "Yes, I'd listen." Don and I went to the medical examiner's office. They listened, but they didn't do anything. They said they would think about it. 1 whole year passed. None of us heard anything. Almost a year to the date. Mary calls the new chief ME and calls to speak to Gary Peterson, find out he's retired. And a very smart young man, Dr. Andy Baker, has taken over. Andy Baker calls Mary and he said the ruling will not be changed. And that was in September. So Mary took this to Hennepin County District Court on 3 years later, May of '07. The district court said, "No, you can't change the medical examiner's ruling. It's final. You cannot even challenge it." So Mary took the case to appellate court. The appellate court said, "No, we can't do anything. Why don't you take it to the Supreme Court?" So Mary took it to the Supreme Court. The appellate court also said, "Maybe you can create a law to challenge MEs." Well, when the Supreme Court turned it down, Mary decided to create a new law. February of 2009, this passed through the Minnesota Health Policy Committee meeting unanimously, 25-0. And then, a few days later, when the medical examiner, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, got wind of what had happened, that they could be challenged, they came back to speak against this, and it still passed unanimously. Well, this caused a lot of things to happen. In fact, the major thing that happened was they hired a lobbyist, and the bill then went in front of the Civil Justice Committee, and the bill died on a 4-4 vote. Well, Mary then goes to the St. Louis Park Police Department and says, "We want to know if Ryan carried his gun with a bullet in the chamber." And they said, "No, we will neither confirm nor deny that. We won't give you any information on that." Well, on February 2010, another year later, Mary brings this back before the Minnesota Health Committee policy, and it passes. The lobbyists and the medical examiners came back and said, "Oh no, not going to happen." So the bill was blocked by the Civil Justice Committee. Finally, the following year, Mary files an open records request for training manuals used when Ryan trained at the St. Louis Park Police Department. And in December 2011, 6 months ago, Mary got a letter from the city attorney who said, "Yes, officers do carry their weapons loaded, chambered with safety off." And Mary called the same day and talked to Dr. Baker and said, "Dr. Baker, I have news. St. Louis Park Police Department does indeed carry their weapons chambered, hot, ready to use." And he said, "I'm sorry, I will not change the manner of death." So that brings us to today. That brings us to all of you. That brings us to the fact that Mariah Hughes is here, which is a national organization that concerns the police survivors. That brings us to the fact that Mr. Johnson is listening from the National Association of Police Officers. And that leaves us with the only hope is that the truth is relentless and it will come out at some point.
The author, Mary Hoeft, would like to thank you if you have purchased her book, The Death of Officer Ryan Hoeft, A Conspiracy of Silence, and especially for taking the time to view these videos. If you agree with the premise that the Hoeft family has put forth, we ask that you write a letter on their behalf. Please write that letter to the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners at the address shown, and please refer to the death of Officer Ryan Hoeft on November 6, 2001. Convey your thoughts about both the cause of his death and the fact that residents of the state of Minnesota have no recourse in case of errors on death certificates. Thank you.